And now, another episode of MMA Gossip with your boys.
We're live. Another episode of MMA Gossip. Obviously, you guys can tell already, special guest on today for you, Joe Solecki, who's going to be fighting Jim Miller. What is it, April 10th? I think the date is. It's going down on ABC. And let's just get right into it, man. How's life been? You know, being a dad, a quarantine dad.
Yeah, it's been good, man. I got my daughter's in the back there. We're just she passed out in her car seat, so I'm not messing with her. I was like, I'll just do the interview in the car. It's perfect. Yeah, so it's been great. I've had a lot of time, to get ready for her. We were home a lot and just training and then hanging out with my wife when she's pregnant and prepping everything, getting everything ready. And then now she's here. You know, things are more open where we're at in North Carolina. So somewhat back to a relatively normal life. But, I mean, if quarantine didn't make me more of a hermit than I already was, like having my daughter, just wanting to be home with her has been. So just been a lot of training and then coming home, hanging out with the family. It's been nice, real simple.
Oh yeah, we're almost back to normal up here in Jersey. Almost, not there, but almost. So how being a dad and all, how has that changed your mindset with fighting? Has it had any big effect on you? Do you approach fights differently? Your training, the whole thing.
I think I had it going into the last fight because I knew I was going to be a dad. You know, we were really, really close at that point. We were like 2 or 3 weeks out. So, all of that, I had spent a lot of time thinking about that. And then now that she's here, I think it just puts the stamp on it even more and puts that exclamation point. As far as just, it's not about me, it's definitely, I want to accomplish my goals and I want to be a world champion. I want to be top 15, but first and foremost, I gotta be a provider, and I gotta be a good man, good competitor, and a good fighter. And then the rest will take care of itself, So I just think about is training as hard as I possibly can every day. Otherwise it's a waste of my time, her time, my wife's time, everybody that's coming together to allow me to be able to, travel like I need to for camp and stuff, and helping out, watching Nora and all that when we're not around, and all the work that's going in. If I'm not going to go out there and train as hard as I can every single day, it would be a big slap in the face to them. And then how I'm going to carry myself, how I'm going to fight, and if I fight the way that I plan to fight, which is tooth and nail for every single position as hard as I possibly can, and using all the training we've done, then the rest will take care of itself. But I think more about it for her. I think early on when I was getting started, I thought about, when I was competing in Jiu Jitsu, it was just about me. It was about being as good as I can be so I could feel like I was, the best or whatever it was going to be. And then, I met my wife and it was about making a life for us, sure. But a lot of it was fun for me. It was fun to be, on the regional scene at a promotion like CFFC where it felt like a mini UFC almost. Like, oh man, I got people screaming in the crowd and interview. This is awesome. This is what it's all about. And it's not what it's all about. It's all awesome stuff and it's really cool perks of our job, but that's what it is. It's a job, right? I'm going to be a family man going to work. And it's just been something that's very, very, it hits home for me and it makes me feel a lot more comfortable every single day.
That's awesome, man.
Are you a fan of the sport, like outside of it? Or do you since it's a job, you try to get away sometimes?
No, this is my passion. It's definitely my job. And I look at it, going out there in the cage on April 10th is my job as a man for my family, but I am a huge MMA fan. I don't miss an event, really, very rarely. Now that there's so many, maybe one or two, or when when I'm in camp, sometimes I might be like, I've had enough fighting this week. I'm exhausted. But I slept through most of the Adesanya Blachowicz fight, which was such a good card. I slept through most of that card. I may have not paid the fee to rent it. So it was on my laptop anyway, so I wasn't out $70 or $80 or whatever. But other than that, I try to watch every single event. Like I'm a huge fight fan. I watch everybody's interview. I was just watching Gregor Gillespie's media scrum or whatever from this weekend before I got on with you guys or listened to it in the car. So I follow a lot.
We can't believe that fight get canceled, man. It sucks.
Yeah.
Who'd you have winning that fight?
You said which fight? Sorry.
The Gregor fight. What were you thinking of Gregor's comeback and all that? And I know it's canceled now, but how were you looking?
Did it get canceled?
Yeah, it was COVID.
Wow. Oh, wow. I definitely had Gillespie. Even with Kevin, I don't think I'll ever pick against him unless it's somebody that can really wrestle their tail off. Wow, I had no idea. That's crazy. Yeah, I would have picked him, but I know the other guy's a good kickboxer too, so you never know. But that's wild. I had no idea.
Yeah, it sucks. We're all upset about it. I actually just left Jiu Jitsu, and it's the first thing I saw on my phone. I was like, oh fuck.
Wow.
But you said you're a huge fight fan and all that. So when you were competing in jiu-jitsu, what made you want to transition? Was it just always watching it and being like having a love for the sport and you're like, oh, I'm going to give this a go and try to learn the whole thing? Or, how'd you transition from jiu-jitsu competition into MMA?
Well, I think when I got into jiu-jitsu, two things really is like, when I got into jiu-jitsu, it was 1999. And then probably a couple years later, it was like when I started watching some of the UFCs, I get them on VHS or DVD at Blockbuster. And it was that was the natural progression for the sport. If you think back to it, Jacare, Damian Maia, all those guys, Lovato was young during that time.
Yeah.
All those guys went on to fight MMA because it was kind of like, okay, they would do the worlds and then they'd fall where they may. They'd go to Abu Dhabi and then after they accomplished that, they would go to MMA. And it was just the natural thing. And if they weren't fighting in the UFC, they were fighting in Pride. So, I grew up reading stuff about the Gracies and watching the Gracie videos and all that. And they were fighting in Pride. So it was just like, oh, you do jiu-jitsu. You do jiu-jitsu for fighting. And then eventually you fight in MMA. And I was terrible at jiu-jitsu at the time as a kid. So it was almost like, I don't even know how to describe it. Like I would grapple with people and I wouldn't do so well. But I felt like when we do our MMA practices, or like we call it Valley Tudo back then, I would feel like I do a lot better because it could almost make up for like some of the technique that I was missing with like punching or position or just scrambling. And I was like, oh man, like I like it better when I can punch. This is way better. So I always told myself, even since I was a little kid, I'm like, I think I have better jiu-jitsu for MMA than I do jiu-jitsu. And then as I got older, it kind of proved true, and then, but it really, my dream was to fight in the UFC. I would always, be downstairs in my punching bag, like pretend that I was fighting Chuck Liddell and whatever. And then it was a pipe dream, and then as time went on and I started having success in jiu-jitsu, it was like, okay, like I can make this transition, I can make a run. But it was always with that in mind. I'd always say, like, even as like an adult, when I was competing like brown belt and like kind of like a full-time competitor and I was in college, it wasn't making pretend, but it was almost like I would treat my matches like they were fight camps. Like I was treating it like it was an MMA fight because that's what I wanted it to be, and I didn't know when the time would be right to transition, but I was getting a lot of practice at like fight camp or like preparation and periodization. And then that was always the goal. Once I was probably about 16 years old, that was really the goal.
That's awesome. There was one thing we had to ask you about. All three of us, we're at we all have blue belts in jiu-jitsu. So we're in that stage where like, we're trying to soak it all in. And Mike was saying, he's like, dude, we have to ask him about his like MMA jiu-jitsu because it's that good.
I appreciate it, man. I come from a school in Jersey with Hassett's where it was very fundamentally sound, and we hammered home position. And now he's got, he's been teaching so long. He's got so many different things he shows. Like I went up there and was learning stuff that I'd never even seen before in 20 years. But that being said, is everybody there still has this positional basis where it's like, you should not be able to be held down in a bad position, And I think with that confidence comes, I can go for stuff. I can be aggressive. Scrambling for top position. And know if I mess up, somebody ends up on my back or mounting me, I better be able to get out. And if I have that confidence, I can fight a lot more freely. And I think that's kind of what started it. And then the other thing was, I think the way it takes to get good at jiu-jitsu now is like very fine motor skills. Like you see guys practice these little half transitions of like half a berimbolo, or like they invert for like a quarter roll and they go back and do it again. Not knocking that at all. It's amazing guys can get that deep into the technique. I am not that guy. I have terrible fine motor skills. Like I'm a gross motor skills guy. So I'm like, okay, I can hug his legs here, step over and hold him. I'm going to do that. So, I think I have a theory that I can take that and do that in competition jiu-jitsu and do just fine. I've gone with a lot of guys that compete at a high level. And I may do that one day when I retire. Fun at it. But it's definitely more time for MMA. So I just think it's more of just being like I'm more of a grinder. I've always been, even in sport jiu-jitsu. It was just put my head in your chest, put my head in your chin, grind my elbow in your face, be mean with it, and try to outposition.
Yeah, I hear that's me too, bro. Because I know you have great cardio, me not so much. So I just try to make my head in your chest, grind you out. Hopefully, get that submission early. Otherwise, if it's dragging on, I'm slowing down.
It's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you start when you started jiu-jitsu? Were you always at Hassett, or did you start elsewhere first?
So I started. So at the time in like 1999, my brother started. I think 2 years before me. He got his black belt like 4 years after me. Not just, I throw that in just to my big brother. So I got to knock on him every chance I get. But sometimes I'll walk by and be like, see that stripe on there? That's a degree. Get one of those 2 years from now. But no, so he started first at 97, and Hassett was still down toward the shore in South Jersey in Mays Landing. So it was like an hour away from where we live. So he had a friend who he came up in traditional karate with and jiu-jitsu. They trained together, Jim Fortunato. And he owned a school much closer to us, like a couple miles from our house. We trained there for a while. And it was a karate school when my brother first got there. Then it turned into jiu-jitsu about a year in, like when he got his blue or his purple. And we trained there for about 3 years. And then I think in 2001 or 2, we ended. But all that time, we knew Mr. Hassett because he was kind of the one mentoring Jim Fortunato in jiu-jitsu because he was a higher belt. So he would take privates with him and train together all the time. So we would always cross-train with them and see him. And Mr. Fortunato was great. And he ended up moving. He runs the Good Fight tournament now. And he's down in Tennessee now. I think he became a preacher. But great guy, really nice. Always see him every couple of years at one of the tournaments we talk. But something about Mr. Hassett was really, really different. Like even my mom and dad would always be like, gosh, if he ever comes closer, we got to get you around that guy. He's a great teacher. And he ended up moving down a lot closer to us. So we made the switch in like 2002. And ever since, and I still go back there and train at least once a year when it's like this, when it's normal, way more. So still to this day, I'm I train with some great guys, John Salter and his gym down here, and I'm on that team, but I'm a Hassett's black belt and I'll always be.
Right. That's what I was actually going to ask you is the last time you came up here and trained. I love hearing all this because in my DM, I mentioned I have a buddy that's training there now and he has nothing but great things to say about Hassett. So obviously I had to ask you, I didn't know how often you came back up here to get some work in there.
Yeah. The last time I made it up was, so when I was fighting at like CFFC and Ring Combat, I would always stop in either before or after the fight, whether it was to cut weight or just hang out and just see him. So that was, a couple times a year. And then this past year, right before COVID hit, I went to the PI to get some testing done and all that and kind of go through the panel there and just also take the perk of being able to use awesome facilities. And then hit home after that and did a seminar there, trained with Mr. Hassett like 4 days. And it was fantastic. I was like, I'm going to come right back up real soon. And then everything hit. So, the last time I was out there was last March, but gosh, definitely want to get up there a lot more. That's what I'm thinking. Now that everything's starting to open up a lot more, I'll try and my daughter's probably old enough for a road trip here soon, so I'll get her up there to see the my personal mecca.
Hell yeah. So
speaking of New Jersey, go ahead, Matt. Go.
Go. You haven't said anything. I want to let you get
that's all right. Speaking of New Jersey natives, upcoming bout with Jim Miller. I can't help but think that you guys are both like I would consider you both to be specialists in the BJJ realm, but you're going up against a guy that. Can I ask, did you watch him while you were growing up in the UFC?
Oh, yeah. I'm a big Jim Miller fan, and I was a big Dan Miller fan when he was fighting. That's the joke I always make is like, until I moved to North Carolina, I'd only been to one UFC. It was my 17th birthday. And some guys from Hassett's went to, when Grapplers Press would do the Fan Expo, the UFC Fan Expo. And we went over to Boston for that. And Dan Miller was fighting. And the funniest part is he was fighting John Salter, who's my coach. And, but I didn't even know who John Salter was back then. I'm living in New Jersey. And most of the time when I would lose in tournaments, it would be to better wrestlers. So I'm like, I'm not rooting for some muscled up wrestler from Alabama. No way. I'm rooting for our Jersey guy, Dan Miller. Like, I wasn't just like cheering for Dan Miller. I was cheering against John Salter, And, but I was a big fan of him and Jim Miller, like huge. And I laugh now. I'm like talking to John. I'm like, are you going to get me back for that and be coaching against me on fight night, cheering for him? But big fan of him. It was like him and Frank Yeager, like two of my favorite fighters growing up. So that's the funny part is like watching film. I'm good. Like my coaches did it early in camp. I'll probably do it this week, about 3 weeks out. But I'm like, I know pretty well what he does because I tried to emulate a lot of it. It's like, it's pretty cool. I'd rather fight somebody that I look up to and like because I'll go in there and there's no animosity. And then it's almost like training with someone who's better than me in the room is I feel like supposed to be, anything I do well will be like, oh, nice. Anything he does well, I'll be like, that's okay. He's been in the UFC a long time. I'm gonna get it back. Whereas sometimes it's like sparring with a good amateur. If I'm in the UFC and I spar with a good amateur and he jabs me, I'll not freak out, but I'll be like, oh my gosh, I gotta get him back. I'm supposed to be in the UFC. I gotta get this guy. And it's the same thing. I'm gonna fight up and I'm gonna, perform. So it's pretty cool to be able to fight somebody that you look up to and have been watching a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're built the UFC, not that I'm this big expert. They've been building you up perfectly. I mean, Wyman with the ton of experience and then Austin Hubbard, it seems like, prospects collide and you came out clearly on top and now they're giving you the vet and Jim Miller. So I like the build up. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I think the fights I've been getting, not that we have the option to say no or I would, have been great. I think, like you said, exactly the way you described it is spot on. It's been a good climb, and I think right now, honestly, we're 2 weeks back from them being the full crowds again. Couldn't be a better time to fight somebody with so many fights in the UFC because I've been in that apex twice now, and it takes away a lot of, people talk about experience and it's a big deal, but I think more experience is being able to filter adrenaline, deal with the crowd and all that crap. But if there's no 20,000 person crowd, now it becomes a ramped up sparring session. So it's a lot more about the skill than it is about being able to handle the extracurriculars, right? Has he fought, I think maybe once or twice during quarantine? Yeah. I fought once. So we're both in the same boat here, in the cage. Yeah. He's probably got, I know he's got tricks, I'm sure, and we all have tricks we like to do. But I think a lot of the experience almost plays more for the extracurriculars than a lot of those taken out. So kind of works perfectly.
That's awesome. I didn't even think about that. You get nervous backstage? Like, I mean, if you have to, right?
Oh yeah. I get nervous the second they text me with a name and a date or anything, or the thought of a fight, I'll be running to the bathroom. And now something that's been new last year or so is like, I get nervous for training now because, like I talk about my coaches is like really the fighters won or lost in the training, outside of the crazy stuff where you slip and get hit with a head kick or a cut. But really, I should be nervous for the work I'm putting in to make sure, like I get nervous for sparring, I get nervous for my hard cardios because if I underperform, I'm gonna know it, and I'm gonna feel like I didn't give my all. So I get nervous for that, but on fight day, I get nervous, and in the back room, I get nervous to a point. But once we make the walk, I'm good to go. Like I don't even know that guy that walks out there. I always say that, like I don't know. I am an introvert. I'm like shy. I get nervous for like social interactions. Somehow whatever song starts playing, the lights come on. I'm like, dude, I feel comfortable as can be. Like, I wrote something. I don't write stuff a lot. I'm not like one of those like meditators or anything. But I was thinking about it in my car. I wrote in my notes on my phone, and I was like, there's 3 places I feel completely at home and comfortable to be myself. And I was like, that's when I go to church with my family. It's when I'm home with my wife and my daughter, and when I'm in a cage under bright lights. I don't know what it is. It feels very natural. So getting to the cage is like a nightmare. I'm like sick all day and this and that. And then once I'm there, I'm like, oh yeah, I compete. This is what I do.
It has to be such a huge advantage. Once you get there, you just feel so at home. So looking back at that Matt Wyman fight, it's a 3-round grind. I just rewatched it. You could tell that you really got under his skin. You were aggravating him because you started talking a bunch of shit. And then you get Austin Hubbard, and it goes from a 3-round grind. You take him out in the first round. What growth could we expect from this fight? Were you able to take, even though that Hubbard fight was so short, you think you were able to take anything from that fight that you'll be able to grow and learn from and implement against Jim Miller?
Oh, definitely. I think that was the most composed I've ever fight, was going in there with him. So I think if I can continue that, plus another, I think it'll be 7 or 8 months by the time we fight on fight night. So taking that amount of work again and right now it's just logging rounds. I'm still a young fighter. I feel like I have good experience. I've had a couple fights in the UFC, had the Contender series, and I've trained a lot of high-level guys now. But I think flipping that switch from, every time the sparring gets better and better and better, and I'm getting more and more comfortable having battles. Before it would be like, okay, and I said this to me and my box coach talking about this, is like, for a long time, it would be like, as long as everything goes right in my preparation before sparring, I'm going to have good rounds today. I'm going to be on point. I'm going to get it done. And it went from that to like, okay, as long as a couple things go right. And now it's like, I could be, like driving here in traffic, mad, upset, whatever, get there a couple minutes behind and have to run, use the bathroom, no warm up, but I know how to just start fighting, and I feel like that is going to help me hugely because, quarantine kind of did that too, I was just staying ready, training, and it's like, hey, you're fighting in 2 weeks. Okay, I can't control anything else. I might as well do it. So just learn to roll with the punches, and the extracurriculars, again, that go with fighting. They were called me, supposed to get on the bus or the shuttle at like 1 p.m. They called and they're like, hey, don't get on the shuttle. It was like 12:30. Okay, when am I going? We don't know. You're probably on the main card. We're not sure. And I'm just sitting, it's like, okay, I can't control this. So I think it's just had me taking a much more stoic approach to training and fighting and being like, whatever happens is what's supposed to happen, and I got to react. It is what it is. So, a lot of time I used to spend time leading up to fights and be like, am I thinking about the fight enough? Am I running and thinking about it enough? Am I too relaxed? Am I too tense? It's like, dude, it doesn't matter. I know now through my sparring that once we touch gloves, I'm going to do the things I need to do or be able to be in a position to do it, whether he can stop it or I don't do it, whatever, that's going to happen. But it's like jiu-jitsu for me now, where I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm slapping hands and I'm going. I don't need a big hoopla. I don't need everything to go right. I don't need to, have any superstitions or anything like that. So I think that's been more time in the cage and in the sparring has done.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. That's a good comparison. Just slap up and just get right into it. It makes life a lot easier. Don't overthink it.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, as a fan, if you, Taylor Vittori, who do you got?
I think Vittori, I really, I hadn't watched a ton of him, but I knew he was the guy that like had a close fight with Israel. And then we watched his last fight. I was watching it with Salter because we were on the way back from cornering somebody, and I had it on my phone in the car. And gosh, he looked fantastic against Hermanson. So I'm not going to pick against him for sure.
That's awesome, dude. And this is your first fight as a dad, so you got to work on the dad body. I know your cardio is on point, but you can't let the dad.
I'm hoping to get that dad. That's what I'm waiting for to kick in. Is like maybe after the fight, he's got 4 kids, I think, or something like that. I know Jim Miller's got family, so it's like he's been a dad longer. Does he have more dads training? Like this is.
Well, you have dogs. I'm a dog dad, and I know how I got dog dad strength, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm hoping he'll get done and be like, hey, man, like he felt really strong. Welcome to the dad club. I'm like, oh, cool. I knew it paid off. That's awesome. So we'll see.
Win or lose, as long as you get that compliment, that's all that matters.
That's all I need.
Well, we'll be pulling for you to get the dub, my man, for real. We appreciate
you, man.
Yeah,
So,
we appreciate you big time.
So this week, finally, 155 got some clarity with the Oliveira Chandler fight being announced for the belt. So looking at the division as a whole, let's say, I think you're going to win against Jim Miller. I've heard you in interviews. You're predicting a victory. What's on your mind after this fight? You looking for a top 15 opponent? Are you hoping to jump up into the top 15 yourself, or what could we expect for 2021 for Joe Solecki?
It's a terrible answer. I know people don't want to hear. It doesn't mean I don't care about my career. I definitely care about my career. I care about winning. I'm the most competitive person you'll probably meet. But I don't care, because there's in my mind right now, there's nothing before or after Jim Miller. There's just that fight, and that was the mindset too. With I think that really changed was, and it sounds so cliche, but like walking out to the last fight, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm willing to die in here as long as I send my 2 checks back to my family, and I don't want to think after, I don't want to think before. I've done that before, like at CFFC, like, oh, if you win this fight, you get a title shot. Well, guess who was never CFFC champion? Me. So. It really is just this fight, and then I know if I do my job, the rest will take care of itself. I'm not in a rush. Jim Miller is a perfect example of it's not really not who's not good. Everybody's good in 155, but it's who's left. Like he may have taken losses here and there, but he was always in the division. He's always there, and he's always going to be there. And look at the career he's made for himself out of that, and I'm sure the living as well. So it's more of that. It's going to be nothing's ever come like for me straight trajectory, or if I've done well, like the jiu-jitsu scene, it was like 5 years of doing great, and then I had to beat 3 black belts in one day, and they're like, hey, who are you? You're like, I've been here the whole time. So I'm sure it's getting more of that in fighting. Wherever I go, it's the rankings or wherever it ends up, it's probably gonna be a long path, so I'm not worried about it. I just want to get through this, and that's it, and then I'll worry about it after that. But I'll be back in the gym on Monday for sure, no matter what happens.
It's like the best outlook you could possibly have. That with all the mental strength and development you've seemed to accumulate since that Hubbard fight, seems like you're definitely headed in the right direction. We're definitely going to be pulling for you in that fight.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. So we'll be watching. You got any final message, shout out? Anyone you want to shout out or anything? Socials?
Yeah, always, man. I just want to thank my family, of course. We talked about them a lot. My wife, the baby takes over in the sense of she's just, she's great. So I talk about her a lot more. I used to talk about my wife a lot. I got to make sure I talk about my wife still, because that's the reason I have this baby, she's fantastic. And it's been awesome. Like just keeping everything going so I can train and make sure that, I have what I need going into the fight. And that's huge. This is our first training camp, with the baby here, and nothing's had to change for me, which is pretty remarkable. It just speaks volumes to what she does and how much she supports me and everything. And she won't be able to come and stuff like that, because not just because of COVID, a lot of people are bringing their families out to Vegas just to be there. She doesn't get to be there because she's got to stay home and look after the baby. So I just want to shout her out. And my team, obviously, Octagon Jitters, John Salter, Corey Crumpler, Wyatt Hopkins, all the guys have been getting me ready for this fight. Zach DeLeon, everybody at Jim O in Gastonia. Talk about Jeff Jim all the time. The guy is just a genius, man. Just one of those coaches that being in your corner gives you confidence, because when he says something, you're like, oh yeah, I believe it. Like I've always worried about getting tired in fights and being like, I'm not like the run at you fighter. And in the Hubbard fight, he's like, you're going to go out there, you're going to stay in his face, do this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm like, that was not my game plan. But he makes you believe in yourself, you know, and he did good. And my boxing coach, Chris Goud as well, everybody at Fitness Edge MMA, and just everybody that supports me, man. It's been really crazy because, like I said, I'm not even a kid that was ever in the school newspaper. So to see how much traction all this has caught, you know, from sponsors to selling just even stupid T-shirts that people want, and it's just crazy to me. People with nice messages, and it does not go unnoticed. I really, really appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me on, and that's it, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time, guys. Joe Solecki will be fighting again April 10th at UFC on ABC. We appreciate him big time, man. We'll be watching for sure.
Awesome. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time, Joe.
Yep, you too. Thank you, guys. See you.
See you soon, Joe. Awesome.
Matt,